For the first time, I learned about Bishop, playing in a youth basketball league. He went to a different school than me. Our teams met at the boys' club on Saturdays. He was one of those kids who grew up early, and he was 5 or 6 inches taller than everyone else. On reflection, I thought my team actually did a pretty good job against Tanner's team. The talent gap is obvious. I also noticed that once Tanner's team took the lead, he started fooling around, showing off, passing behind the back, shooting three-pointers, etc. We came out, and while the end result was not in doubt, we made the game more competitive, what it really should have been. We ended up in the same high school and both played football our junior year. That's when I officially met Tanner. As I expected, Tanner was big, athletic, and popular on the football field. Naturally, he was a quarterback. I tried out for the position of midfielder. Our coach used a system with 2 midfielders. There was a guy on our team named Nat Whitfield, who was the fastest in position first midfielder. I was second. I wasn't as fast as Nat, but I was a good blocker, defended Tanner when he passed the ball, was a decent runner, and could catch a pass out of the way. In the backfield, this part of the field behind the line of scrimmage. Where Tanner was bright, I was stable. On defense, Tanner was a middle linebacker, and I played fullback. While playing defense, it happened more than once that he tried to make a spectacular dash, and I had to cover him from the position of defender. We were pretty good, and I started hanging out with a group of football players. Of course, the center of this group was Tanner. They say opposites attract, and although Tanner and I had a lot in common, we were almost opposite in personality. He was a loud, popular, outgoing guy. I, on the other hand, was a bit of an introvert, level-headed, and certainly not flamboyant. But somehow we became good friends. Tanner was smart, but he wasn't always attentive. More than once, I shared my notes with him or did last-minute tutoring to help him with an upcoming test. Usually the reason for his inattention in class was some girl. The price for helping me study was my social presence in Tanner's solar system. After classes, at lunch, at school dances, a crowd of girls and boys always gathered near Tanner. I felt cramped in this social circle. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't a nerd, but compared to Tanner, we all looked a little paler. Through this association, I became a member of the popular crowd. For the first few years of high school, neither of us had a girlfriend. We did all the social things that happen at school, but there were no constant companions. Everything changed during my junior year of high school. Out of the blue, and I'm still not sure how it started, Tanner had a girlfriend, Anna Marie Dubois. Anna studied at Saint Cecilia Catholic School, located on the other side of town. The fact that she studied not at our school, but at a Catholic one, gave her a certain local exoticism. Her appearance contributed to this exoticism. Anna was of average height, about 5 feet 7 inches. She had dark, almost black hair. She had olive skin and an attractive heart-shaped face, slightly almond-shaped eyes and full lips. Very beautiful, but it was her body that impressed me. Slender, with a thin waist and an athletic, strong build. The prom dance was approaching, and Tanner had apparently become infatuated with the beautiful Anna. I didn't have a pair. One day, a week or so before the dance, Tanner and I were sitting in the cafeteria. "Max, do you have a date for dancing next week?" Tanner asked me. I felt like he was up to something. Although I considered him a close friend, perhaps my best friend, his interest in my well-being was rarely expressed out loud. It was a little unusual that he inquired about my dance status. "No, nothing yet," I told him. We had a lot of wonderful girls with whom we went to school, but I was not attracted to any of them. "In that case, Anna has a friend, Mia. She's very sweet and isn't dating anyone right now," Tanner told me. "Tanner, I don't know her. I've never seen her. She doesn't know me," I told him. "But what does she look like?" I asked. I guess I was still interested. It turned out that Mia Battle was also a junior at Saint Cecilia's. While Anna was athletically built and taller, Mia was petite. Where Anna was a gorgeous babe, Mia would most likely be considered a cutie. Small, slender, and cute. We first met at McDonald's. Tanner and I came together. Mia came with Anna. I guess physically I passed some kind of test with Mia, and of course she did too. The following Saturday, we went to the prom as a couple with Tanner and Anna. That night after the dance, I said that you had a good time. She replied that she also liked it. I liked her. She was cheerful and funny, and the fact that she went to another school gave her some mysterious importance in our school. Through Tanner, I found out that she liked me too. We started dating. There was a Christmas ball at Saint Cecilia's school. I guess since it was a religious school, they could get away with saying Christmas. In our politically correct school, any December performance had to be called winter. However, it was a big deal at Saint Cecilia's, and Tanner and I were invited to the dance by our respective couples. The dance took place not in some crappy school gym, but in the ballroom of the Hilton Hotel downtown. We walked into the ballroom, Tanner, Anna, Mia, and I wasn't prepared for the hostility from the boys who attended St. Cecilia's. We were treated as if we were a raid of marauders from another village intent on stealing their women. There were a few comments as we passed, and I didn't see a single friendly male face. I was dancing with Mia, and this guy, dark-haired and stocky, interrupted my dance. I politely let Mia dance. After 2 dances, she joined me at our table. Later, we were dancing again, and the same guy tried to interfere again. "Michael, I'm dancing with my boyfriend, Max," she said. "I already danced with you." "One more dance, he asked and tried to move closer, pushing me slightly while staring at Miyu. There was a fight, but my friend stood up for me. The handlers conferred, and I noticed one of Michael's friends talking to one of the handlers, probably a parent. The adult nods, as if agreeing. The outcome of the incident is this: Tanner and I were kicked out of the dance. Any protests we attempted were quickly suppressed. They have home field advantage. Mia and Anna kindly leave with us. As I leave, I hear Michael say, "See you later, cool guy." We lock eyes as the 4 of us leave the ballroom. I'm not used to having enemies. Even on the sports fields, I try to be a good sportsman and shake hands with my opponent, no matter how aggressive the games get. This is a new experience. Tanner and Anna laugh as we leave. Mia clings possessively to me as we all leave the Hilton. It's still early, and we ate almost nothing at the dance, Tanner says. "Let's go to Bernie's Cafe," he says. We're stuffing ourselves to a booth in a cafe and talking a little about dancing. "Max, thank you for protecting me," Mia tells me, hugging me. Tanner and Anna laughed at the fight. "You really showed them, Tiger," Tanner commented with a laugh. "Who was this idiot?" he asked. "Just some guy," Mia answered. "A little more than just some guy," Anna added. And then she told us the whole story. This guy, Michael Amich, had been Mia's boyfriend for most of her sophomore year. In the summer, she caught him with another girl, and they broke up. Since then, he has been trying to get Mia back. "Let's not talk about Michael," Mia intervened. "You're my boyfriend now," Mia said. Boy, the run-in with Michael Amich seemed to have an effect on Mia. She became more attentive and seemed happy to be with me. We sat for a while, ate and chatted. I hadn't spent that much time with Anna before. I noticed that, in addition to her appearance, she is also a sweet and considerate person. She asked if I was hurt after the fight and looked worried. I assured her that everything was fine. In the end, we had a good time. Even though we got kicked out of the dance, we still had fun. I also realized how much I liked Mia. That evening, I saw a different side of her. On the good side, maybe I was starting to fall in love with her, and I could also tell that her feelings for me were growing too. In addition to the pleasure of communicating with Mia, our relationship also developed. I met her family, and she met mine. We did normal relationship things. Dinners with her family, events with mine, double dates with Tanner and Anna, and lots of fun, normal relationship activities. We also talked about the future. During our freshman year, we began to prepare for college, taking the test for admission to higher education institutions, submitting documents, and visiting campuses. In my mind, our relationship was an integral part of the future. Perhaps for Mia, these thoughts were not so serious. I was an only child. My parents and I were very close. Our family was not big. My father had one sister who lived not far from us. My mother's family was from the Midwest, and we didn't see them often. My father owned his own insurance agency, John Early Insurance. This summer, I started working in his office from 8 in the morning until noon 3 days a week. The other 2 days of the work week, I helped out at my Aunt Helen's house. Aunt Helen never married and lived in my grandparents' old house with a huge lot in what was once a suburb. The urban development boundary passed Helen's site many years ago. New neighborhoods grew up around it. Her house stood in the center of a large plot of several acres. Many developers were interested in this valuable piece of land. Helen had no intention of selling it. I was close to Aunt Helen, but she was strange. She constantly, I'm not sure if you can call it a whisper or a purr, but this sound always came from her in a low voice. I got used to it, but it was quite strange. With all this land, there was always something to do. When I showed up to help, she would hand me a to-do list for that day. She was always sweet, pleasant, and I could tell she liked me, but she never paid me a cent or thanked me when I finished work. Before leaving, she always gave me an ice cream sandwich. That's all. One day, after returning from Aunt Helen's, I told Dad, "She never pays me anything." "Don't worry, you'll get paid," my dad told me. I wondered what he meant. Between working in my dad's office, helping Aunt Helen, and playing soccer on my own, my summer was busy. But I still had time for Mia. If possible, I tried to see her every evening, but usually it turned out to be several times a week. Looking back, we can say that with Mia everything was fine. Our relationship just didn't progress. At the end of the summer, before football practice began, my family took a 2-week trip to California. We went somewhere every year. This year, I was less excited. I would miss you, Mai. As soon as we returned from vacation, football training began. Tanner and I went to training together, and I realized that we had hardly seen each other over the summer. "How is Anna?" I asked him while driving home on Monday. "She's history," Tanner told me casually. "What?" I answered. "When this happened, why didn't you tell me why?" I bombarded him with questions. I was shocked by all of this. "Easy, Max," Tanner chuckled, looking at my confusion. "Hey, we're about to graduate. I didn't want to be tied down in my last year of school," he explained. "But God, Tanner," I said. "Anna is beautiful and so sweet." "She's perfect," I said. "Wow," he said. "Looks like Max has a little crush on Anna." He turned and smiled at me. "Tanner," I said, "it's not like that. You guys just looked perfect together. I thought it would be a long time for you and Anna." "Max, we're in high school," he said. "Such school relationships don't last long. There are a lot of girls there. Of course, Anna is wonderful, but we are still too young to settle down. Maybe in 10 years, but not now," he explained. I silently considered his words as we drove home. I thought about her and all these girls. I thought about me and our future, and I also thought about the beautiful Anna. I picked Mia up on Saturday night after her first full week of soccer. I haven't had time to be alone with her since my parents and I went to California. I couldn't wait to spend some time with her. Mia seemed happy to see me, just a little reserved. Perhaps this is a small adaptation after separation, I thought. We drove and chatted about my holidays and going back to school. Quite innocent. After I took her home, I couldn't help but think that things were a little different. Maybe we've just been apart for too long. Maybe I need to adjust a little, I thought. The next week I called and tried to get our relationship back to normal. But something was still wrong. I asked her what was the matter. "I've just been busy, back to school and stuff," she said. "My mom drives me crazy," she added. "I see," I said, but I still felt like something was still wrong. "So, are we ready for Saturday night?" I asked, trying to cement our date. "Well, I don't know," she answered. "I think so. I'll let you know." And that was the end of it. Before I could ask any more questions, she made some excuse and hung up. We are definitely not back to normal. On Saturday morning, there was still no word from Mia. I called once, but there was no answer. I decided that I would go straight to her house at the usual time. Her mother opened the door. I always got on well with Mrs. Battle. She looked at me with a puzzled expression. "Max," she said. "Hello, Mrs. Battle," I said. "Mia is not at home, Max," she told me. She had a confused expression on her face, as if she wanted to tell me something, thought about it, and decided to remain silent. "I will say that you came by." And with these words, she closed the door. I didn't miss the pitiful expression on her face as the door closed. During my relationship with Mia, we always did one thing well: communication. If I wrote to her, she responded quickly. When we talked about problems, difficulties, minor troubles, and the like, we always discussed them. But now everything was different. She fenced herself off from me. For several minutes, I just sat in the car. The Mia I knew and who had become so close to me would not treat me like that. We talked about the future. We talked about how to coordinate our college plans. On some occasions, we also talked about a future together after college: career, home, marriage, and even children. Obviously, something was changing. I just didn't know what exactly. Finally, I left and went home. I was in a daze. The only thing I told myself I wouldn't do was call her again and again. As much as I want to know what's going on, I won't be some pathetic, desperate guy who sacrificed his masculinity. I told myself I wouldn't contact her until I heard from her first. I thought through all her actions, signs, unspoken feelings. Unfortunately, the logical conclusion was that we were breaking up. She simply didn't have the decency to formalize the breakup. Our first football game was on Friday against Roosevelt. During training that week, I was in a fog. I wasn't concentrating. I wasn't playing aggressively. I was on the verge of being benched. Somehow, I mustered enough energy to continue playing, but with difficulty. We won the match, but the score difference was much closer than it should have been. Roosevelt wasn't very good. I definitely didn't play very well. I had to be the brains of the defense. Poor performance on my part contributed to the score getting closer. Over the next week, I received minimal messages from Mia. "I'm tired of the questions, 'What's going on?' 'Are you upset?' etc." I promised myself that I wouldn't whine or beg her to talk to me. She simply insisted that she was busy. The following week, we lost a football game to Regis. We should have beaten them by 2 touchdowns. In fact, last year, we beat them 34-10. No matter how I analyzed the game, my poor play was the reason I lost. Our next opponent was Saint Cecilia's school. The Saint Cecilia Crusaders were renowned sporting giants. It was a private school, and they were recruiting talent. Our team, Washington, had a little rivalry with the Crusaders. I was wondering if Mia would be at the game. Last week, our communication practically stopped. We started, and they scored almost immediately. But then we scored 7-7 at the end of the first quarter. Their offense was led by all-league quarterback Gabriel Dante. Their most productive defender was Michael Amich, the same guy I got into a fight with at the Christmas party. Amich was a muscular, straightforward power player. The Crusaders scored early in the second quarter. Our offense was unable to penetrate the Crusaders' tough defense. The quarter was coming to an end, and the Crusaders' attack was gaining momentum. This was our first goal on the 9-yard line. We all thought Dante would pass the ball, but instead it was a draw for Amich. The two of them teamed up against Tanner, so he was eliminated from the game. I saw the show on Amich. I moved with some hesitation to fill the hole. Amich put his head down when we met and ran right over me for a touchdown. As I lay on the lawn, Jubilantimich ran up and stood over me, saying all sorts of nonsense. "Hey, tough guy," he said. "Not so tough now. Great tackle. I'm sure Mia enjoyed watching that game. Ha, cool guy," he added with a laugh as his teammates surrounded him. Mia, I thought. What does this have to do with Mia? It's halftime in the locker room, and we're down 21-7. Tanner stood up and addressed the team. "We played like shit in the first half," he proclaimed. "We are better than this. This team is not so good. Focus, and we will win," he continued. "Don't let this team crush us." And with that statement, he looked straight at me. I lowered my head, unable to look him in the eyes. The meaning was clear. Amich literally ran into me. Just as we were getting ready to leave the locker room to start the second half, Tanner grabbed me and pulled me aside. "Max, you need to get your head out of your ass and focus," he told me. I began to nod in passive agreement. This time, he pushed me towards the lockers and looked me straight in the eye. "Do you know Fatmir returned Tomech?" Tanner told me. "He wants to humiliate you in front of her. Now you have a choice. You can be a girl in love and feel sorry for yourself. Or you can give Imech realize he's in a fucking football game. Max, you're the smartest guy I know. Focus the hell up." And with these words, he joined the team on the field. His words are deeply embedded in my mind. I moped while Mia went back to Michael Amich, and here Amich runs up to me and mocks me, and all I did was feel sorry for myself. A new emotion blossomed deep inside me as I ran out for the second half. It was anger. Anger at myself, anger at the Crusaders, anger at Amich, but most of all on Mia. At the beginning of the second half, we scored immediately, but then it seemed that neither team could sustain the attacking efforts. About halfway through the third quarter, I saw the Crusaders line up in an unusual formation. I remembered her from the game video. I quickly told Nat, our corner linebacker, to stay one-on-one with Perkins, their wide receiver. "I will cover the flat. This is the area field extending 10 yards into the defensive backfield from the line of scrimmage and extending beyond," I told him. He looked at me, eyes wide, and nodded. As Perkins and Nat flew past me, I accelerated and headed toward the flat. And just like on film, Amich goes flat. Dante's pass was a little high and Amich had to jump a little, but he caught the ball. Meanwhile, I was quickly approaching him from my position as a free defender. Everything around me slowed down, even though I was moving at full speed. I saw how Amich jumps and follows the ball as it moves to catch it. Instinct told me to hit lower. Last time he went over me when I hit him high. I won't do that again. I saw his left foot planted firmly on the turf, all his weight resting on that booted foot, holding it there for that brief moment. I rushed forward, head and shoulders at full speed, towards that landing left leg. He didn't stand a chance. Amich, I lost my balance, and I quickly picked up the ball and ran 57 yards for a touchdown. As I jogged toward my jubilant teammates, I glanced into the Saint Cecilia stands. I saw dark-haired Mia looking at me with tears in her eyes. Unable to resist, I smiled at her. Amich carried off the field on a stretcher. This seemed to snatch the life from the Crusaders. The final score was 35-24 in favor of Washington. As we lined up to shake hands, there were a few angry comments. Last in line was a guy I knew was a friend of Amich. I couldn't help it. I was still so angry. "Hey, Jordan," I said to my friend Amich, "tell Michael I hope he gets better soon," I said with obvious false sincerity. "Go to hell, asshole," that was all the guy said. Despite my bravado during the game, I was deeply hurt by Mia's betrayal. I had a terrible feeling that it would be a long time before things got better. They say that the opposite of love is indifference, but not for me. It was hatred. My senior year in high school seemed to fly by, just like my 4 years in college. I always planned to work with my father in the insurance office. I majored in finance. Many of my friends and classmates changed their majors during college. I knew what I was going to do, and there was a certain satisfaction in that. Throughout my time at school and college, I never had a serious girlfriend. My experience with Mia scarred me. I was betrayed. I put so much emotion and energy into our relationship, and then she cheated on me. She didn't even have the decency to properly break up with me. I learned not to trust women. I never talked to her to find out what happened. Tanner briefly told me that during the summer he and Amich we started communicating, and then everything went as usual. I couldn't understand it. This is probably why I didn't have a serious relationship with anyone in college. I was afraid of the pain of betrayal. My only satisfaction came from the knowledge that I had completely ruined Michael's chances. Amich played football in college. I caught a glimpse of him once, and he walked with a limp. Fine. Speaking of college football, Tana received a scholarship to play football at a small college in Texas. In college, he and I rarely talked, but when we did, it was like old times. Tanner decided to specialize in construction management. I completed my bachelor's degree in finance and threw myself into my work. My father had a substantial business, and I began to network with some of his clients. I was hardworking, sincere, and tried to be an individual. I saw that I had a very good future ahead of me at John Early Insurance. And then tragedy came to our family. At just under 60 years old, Aunt Helen died quietly in her sleep one April night. Her heart gave out. It was a sad time for us. We weren't a big family. At holidays and celebrations, it was usually just Mom and Dad, Aunt Helen and me. Now her weird, quirky personality that we all loved is missing. A few weeks after her death, Dad and I met with Helen's lawyer. For some reason, Dad insisted that I accompany him to this meeting. Helen had a small investment account that she left to my father, but the surprise in her will was that her house and all 7 acres of prime real estate went to me. To say I was shocked would be an understatement. When we left the law office, my father put his arm around me and said, "Remember how you once told me that Aunt Helen never paid you for all your help?" he asked. I nodded affirmatively. "So, son, I think you just got paid," he told me. I inherited not only the house and land, but also all of Aunt Helen's things. Now I assess the house from a completely different point of view. It used to always be Aunt Helen's house, with flowered curtains, wardrobes, crowded porcelain, and lace napkins. Now he was mine. This was far from a bachelor pad. I had a job. I was busy between owning a house and working at an insurance agency. One thing I noticed at work was that my father continued to do everything the same as he had for the last 25 years. Times have changed rapidly in the financial products industry. While Dad would likely keep his clients until his retirement, for the business to thrive and grow, we had to be willing to change. One of the first things I did was take a thorough look around our office. It's outdated. Old wide beige Venetian blinds hung on the windows. On the glass front door hung a small cardboard clock with moving hands that signaled our time. Straight out of the 60s. One of the things I thought was important was a positive first impression. The landscaping in front of the front door was very outdated. A large square of crusty dust in front of the entrance, separated by a cracked cement path. A sagging porch with outdated wooden railings. 2 gleaming brass colonial-style lanterns hung on either side of the front door. None of them were pointing straight up. It all looked old-fashioned and cheap. This was the first thing I had to do to revamp the business. We needed a different first impression. I called several landscape architects to have a look, give their thoughts, and propose a design. To my surprise, when the second of 3 representatives from the landscaping company came to our first meeting, I saw that it was Anna Dubois, Mia's high school friend. At first, I was amazed to see her. The whole negative experience with Mia flashed through my head. I immediately felt uneasy. I felt myself blush when we came face to face. "Max, oh my God," she said, "is that really you?" She asked with sincere warmth. Ignoring my outstretched hand, she pulled me into a very pleasant hug. I immediately began to relax. I remembered the kindness Anna showed when we were teenagers. "How are you?" she asked. "You look great, so this is your business." She bombarded me with questions. We spent a few minutes catching up. She graduated from the Faculty of Architecture and studied for a master's degree in landscape architecture. She had an apartment in the city and worked full-time as a designer at GL2 Architecture. I told her briefly about my work, but quickly changed the subject to our office and some ideas I had for what I would like to do for our front entrance. Anna seemed a little surprised that I switched to business so quickly. She asked a few questions, took some notes, and said she would have some preliminary sketches for me by Friday. "I was so glad to see you, Max," she told me with a big smile on her face. "I'll call you at the end of the week." Another short hug, and she was gone. Overall, Anna looked even better than in high school. The same beautiful face and the same beautiful body, I thought. Be careful, I told myself, The memories of my experience with Mia were no longer fresh, but still strong. The first architect came with a huge estimate, and I excluded him from the list. The third postponed the meeting. I was hoping that Anna had a good project that would fit into our budget. On Thursday afternoon, she called. "I have a couple of ideas for your entrance," Anna told me. "Okay, great," I said. "I'm looking forward to seeing them." "Would you like to meet for lunch tomorrow?" she asked. "We could meet at the Bluebird at any time convenient for you," she suggested. I hesitated. I know this is a business meeting, but it felt like it was a date. It's not that I don't date at all, though. Rather, her connection with Mia seemed too close to me. I think she sensed my wariness and quickly interjected. "Or I can come to your office if you want," she said. "No," I said. "Can I have lunch tomorrow, say, at 12:30? I asked. She agreed to this time, and we agreed to meet for lunch. I felt a mixture of emotions that evening. The anger towards Mia has not subsided to this day. Somehow my brain became associated with this anger. Another thought was the hope that her designs were acceptable and within our budget. And one last lingering thought. Anna was beautiful, and I enjoyed her company. Alarm bells rang. When we met at the Blue Bird Bistro, she looked even better. She seemed to take extra time to look good. I'm sure her looks helped boost business for GL2. And again, a warm hug as a sign of greeting. We skipped the small talk and moved on to her projects. The first idea was good, quite simple. The second one was a little Asian style. I like it. Now about the cost. The first option came in slightly under budget, but the Asian design exceeded our maximum budget by $10 dozen. I told her I needed to think about it. Just then the food arrived and we started talking, but not specifically about business. She asked where I lived, and I told her a story about Teat Helen and my inheritance. She seemed genuinely interested in my living situation. She knew about this piece of land. Later, she asked about my plans for the weekend. On the weekends, I tend to either the house or the yard, depending on the weather, I told her. When the weather is good, like this weekend, I spend most of Saturday and Sunday outside. I love gardens and plants, she told me. It must be fun to have so much land. I've described the work on my site many times, I told her, but I've never called it fun. I added with a laugh. "Well, I'd love to see that," she said. "Maybe one day I'll surprise you and stop by." The next day, Saturday, as I told Anna, I spent the entire day working in the yard. There was so much work to do. Aunt Helen created a formal English garden on most of the property. Sculptural hedges, rosaries, and planned plantings. I wasn't sure what I wanted, but Aunt Helen's style seemed too old-fashioned to me. It must have been mid-afternoon when I saw dust rising up the driveway, signaling a visitor. Most likely it would have been my mom or dad, but I knew they were out of town. To my surprise, it was Anna. I immediately assessed myself, unshaven, dirty, sweaty, and shirtless. I greeted her and immediately reached for my shirt. "You didn't have to wear it for me," she said. "I was just admiring the scenery," she added with a laugh. I looked at her, trying to understand what she meant. The first thought that flashed through my head was, wow, she really works hard to get that landscaping contract. I pushed the thought aside and politely gave her a grand tour of the site. She seemed genuinely interested. I pointed out what I needed to do, and she made some suggestions that seemed like good ideas. "So what were you working on?" she asked. I told her, and without hesitation she began to help me with my current work. I appreciated her help, but couldn't help but wonder about her motivation. It seemed to me that she was doing everything possible to get a contract. We worked like this, side by side, for several hours. It was a very comfortable environment. I had to admit that I enjoyed her company. Towards the end of the day, she said that it was time for her to go, but she lingered, as if expecting some kind of invitation from me. I thanked her profusely, showed her to the bathroom to wash up, and then she somewhat reluctantly left. That evening, all my thoughts were occupied with Anna. She was beautiful and so sweet, but she was once friends with Mia. This was a huge sign for me to give way to the road. The following week, we discussed the landscaping proposal. I told her that we would rather have an Asian-themed design, but it was out of budget. I hinted that we had other proposals that were not made. By the end of the week, she was back with minor changes to the original design and a new cost that was only $2,000 over budget. We have agreed to. She said they could start work in 3 weeks. We need to celebrate, she said. Ha ha ha, I laughed evasively. Have a nice weekend, I told her. She seemed a little discouraged that I didn't support the idea of a celebration. It was another warm weekend, and I was working on my property. And again on Saturday afternoon, Anna appeared. This time with a picnic basket. Can you bring this into the house? She asked, handing me the basket. What are we working on now? I told her, and she got to work. At the end of the day, she asked me to bring a picnic basket and a corkscrew. She spread a tablecloth on the ground. She prepared a mini feast and brought a bottle of Oregon Pinot Noir. We had a pleasant evening, and I really enjoyed talking to her. It seemed like we had a lot in common. I also started to think that since we were already signed to GL2, her company, there was no reason for her to continue being nice if that was the only goal. We continued these chance encounters over the next few weeks. She would either come into the office for information on our design project, or she would come over on the weekends and help me around the house. We continued to meet, and our friendship grew. However, nothing romantic so far. She didn't make any moves, and I, although a large part of me wanted it. There was a nagging reminder of Mia's betrayal, warning me that I might get hurt. It was Friday evening. I left the office around 6 o'clock, went home and did the evening 5-mile jog. While I was thinking about dinner, my cell phone rang. It was Anna. Hello, Anna, I greeted. Loud conversations and music could be heard in the background. Having received no answer, I asked, Hello? Do you have a girlfriend? Anna answered slightly indistinctly. Eh? I answered. At that moment, I heard a rustling sound, then another voice in the background, and then on the phone. Hi, Max. My name is Lindsay. I'm Anna's friend, she said. She had a little too much alcohol and was talking about driving to your place, but she shouldn't drive. Can you come to Palantino and pick her up? She asked. I told her I could. Having quickly cleaned myself up, I headed to the city center. Palantino has a very good restaurant and bar. A little too good to be a pickup bar, more of a date spot. I found them and met Lindsay. She was quite attractive, but then Anna appeared. In my eyes, she was a goddess. There was no comparison. Anna was slightly drunk and apologized for calling. I ordered a beer and Lindsay quickly left. Only Anna and I remained. After staying at Palantino for only a few minutes, she asked me, Can we go to your house? I agreed, and we left. We drove up to the house, and I mentally assessed its condition. I knew it still looked like it was occupied by an old, lonely woman. I had not yet had time to do anything inside. All my forces were directed outward. Anna didn't seem to care. It was unclear to me where this conversation would lead. Anna, slightly tipsy, asked if I liked her, and I replied that, of course, I did. She asked if I had a girlfriend, and I said no. I don't want to seem vain, she said, but guys usually like me. But it doesn't look like you, she told me. I assured her that she was very attractive. She then asked why I didn't ask her out. I took a deep breath and talked about my insecurities surrounding my high school relationship with Mia. We talked about it a little, and then she started talking about her. I know he's your friend, and he's fun to be around, she said, but he can also be an asshole. I've learned to stay away from those self-centered types. I feel much better with a different type of man. She said this and looked me straight in the eyes. There was silence for a moment as she looked at me, and my head was spinning. It was all good, I hoped. At that moment, she left to go to the toilet. I sat in thought and wondered what the next step should be. I shouldn't have worried. The next step became very obvious when she returned. I remember the first time I saw Anna, how beautiful she was, and what a great body she had. And now, years later, escaped from my fantasies, here she is. We have started a new chapter in our relationship. At first, I was cautious. Obviously, my teenage breakup never left my psyche, but we talked about it. Anna knew, and the fact that she and Mia had been close all this time gave her additional information. And sometimes I felt insecure that this beautiful, sexy, sweet woman had chosen me. One evening, left alone, I carefully examined myself in the mirror. I was 6 feet tall, in pretty good shape, and played sports. I had all my hair, and to be honest, my face was pretty good, bordering on average. Anna made a lot of efforts to calm me down. I had moments of uncertainty, but they became less and less. We got along great. It seemed like we had similar goals and objectives in life. But some small part of my brain stubbornly expected that tragedy would happen someday. I tried my best, but it was difficult to completely get rid of these thoughts. I felt like my life was going in the right direction on several fronts. Business was fine. I tried to transform our business without interrupting or changing all the positive things that made my father successful. My house was transformed. Anna loved working there. She especially enjoyed gardening, planting, landscaping, and outdoor space design. More than once, she begged me never to sell this valuable and unique piece of land that she transformed. And of course, my relationship with Anna was wonderful. Small hesitant voices of doubt turned into rare whispers. Anna continued to assure me of her love. There was one thing I had been putting off, but knew I had to do. I needed to call Tanner. I had to tell him about my relationship with Anna. I knew it had been almost 9 years since they had been together, but there was some nebulous male code that we had to follow to some extent. I was dating his ex-girlfriend. As far as I know, there is no statute of limitations. I should have called him. Tanner lived in Texas. He went to work for a large real estate developer in the Houston area. In my infrequent conversations with him, things seemed to be going well. He claimed he liked Texas, but wouldn't mind returning to the Pacific Northwest someday. I called. A few minutes later, I started talking about the reason for my call. "Tanner," I began, "I'd like to talk to you about something," I said. There was a pause. He was silent. Well, I wanted to let you know that I'm in a relationship with Anna," I told him. "Dubois," he exclaimed after a pause. There was disbelief in the tone. "Yes, with Anna from Saint Cecilia's," I said. At first, there was silence on the line, and then I heard a chuckle coming from Tanner. "Well, congratulations," he said. "She's a great girl. Dude, I'm proud of you. I know you've been shy around women for a while." We talked for a few more minutes, and his relaxed agreement with Anna and my relationship dispelled all my fears. When we finished talking, he said, "I'll have to get up and visit you all soon." You all, looks like Texas started grow to Tanner. Months passed, and our relationship seemed to continue to develop. Anna took care of the garden and landscaping in my house. We worked side by side to change the whole atmosphere of this place. We were a team working together. I had been thinking about proposing, and discussing it with Tanner seemed to remove one of the obstacles. Now that everything was done, I had no doubts. My trust issues have virtually disappeared. Anna's assurances that she had feelings for me extinguished any remaining insecurity in me. I started looking for the ring. One of the byproducts of a business like insurance is that you meet more people. You also need to sell yourself to these people. It was always nice when I really liked the person I was doing business with. One of my new client friends was a slightly older man named Greg Boston. I first met Greg when I was his client. He built a work shed for me on my property. One evening, after he finished work, we drank beer and started talking. I told him about my business, and he ended up becoming my client. More importantly, he became my good friend. Greg went from small house remodeling jobs, like he did for me, to building houses. In our area, the key to a builder's success was buildable land. Greg kept asking me in a good-natured manner if I would ever like to sell the property. I politely refused. In the end, I proposed, and a happy, delighted Anna agreed. Now we had to take care of wedding matters. Anna and her mother did most of this work. I became so friendly with Greg that I asked him to be my best man. I asked Tanner to be my witness. One day, while planning a wedding, Anna and I were in the barn that Greg had built. She turned to me with a serious expression on her face. "Max, I need to talk to you about something," she told me. Oh, what now?" I nodded silently to her. "This concerns the guest list and Mia," she said. A wave of relief washed over me, and I thought it was something serious. "I should invite Mia and her husband," she told me. "I've known Mia almost all my life. She won't be a bridesmaid or anything, just a guest." She said this while looking at me intently. I thought for a moment. I knew that Anna was still friendly, if not friendly, with Mia. Also knew that Mia married that asshole Michael Amich, and I also knew that their friendship had weakened, mainly because Anna knew how much I disliked Mia. I discovered one more thing. When Anna did not want to answer a question, she answered the question with a question. I first suspected it when she was out with friends one evening. When she returned home, I asked her who she was with. "Why do you want to know this?" she answered. I suspected that Mia was in the group of friends. I let it slide because I knew she was trying to protect me. But this feature was worth noting. I paused for a moment and said, "Of course, she's your old friend. I understand that she must be present." I took the high road. "Thank you," she said and kissed me deeply. I hugged her back, and then she began to walk away towards the sink to continue what she was working on. The wedding was wonderful. We played it on our territory. The gardens and grounds looked fantastic. Anna did an excellent job with landscaping and was proud of the work she did. The wedding gave her the opportunity to show how she transformed everything. Among the guests, there were several people worthy of attention. The first was Tanner, my good friend from high school and Anna's ex-boyfriend. Tanner's outgoing personality quickly dispelled any awkwardness surrounding Anna and Tanner's decades-long friendship. Speaking of character, even though he was wearing a tuxedo, the Texas influence was obvious. Along with his tuxedo, he wore a Stetson hat and black cowboy boots. I lost count of how many times he said "y'all," but he succeeded in the image. I had forgotten how funny Tanner can be. He also brought a companion with him, a stunning blonde with a hint of some kind of European accent. Her name was Greta St. Kitts. She was great, and although I thought my Anna was beautiful, I hate to say it, but next to Greta, she looked a little plain. And then I realized I had to say hello to Mia and Michael. I have avoided any contact or conversation about them since school. "Congratulations, buddy," he told me Amich and extended his hand. "Thank you, Michael," I said and shook the outstretched hand. Mia came towards me to hug me. I quickly extended my hand in greeting. She hesitated for a moment and then shook my hand. "You look beautiful, Mia," I said in greeting. She looked at me with a mixture of embarrassment and uncertainty about my sincerity. She opened her mouth to say something, looked around, and remained silent. "What business are you in?" asked Mimich. I briefly told him about my insurance agency and then felt obligated to reciprocate the question. This was a mistake. Amich talked for almost 15 minutes about his job and how well he was doing it. He worked in property management for a company I had heard about, Winegrass Properties. I remembered his friendship with Jordan Winegrass from high school. The company had a dubious reputation as slumlords who used, at best, unethical methods to acquire property. Michael didn't say anything about it. Jordan's father, Sidney, was the owner. "Please stop by sometime," he told me Amich. "Maybe you can save us some money on insurance." And he handed me a business card. I nodded in confirmation, knowing full well that I would never want anything to do with Amich or Winegrass. Another guest I should mention is our secretary in the insurance office, Yasmin Reynosa. She was wonderful, hardworking, with a slight accent, and just over 5 feet tall. She worked with us for almost 2 years and became invaluable to the company. I never met her husband, saw him a couple of times when he picked her up after work and waved, but that was it. Yasmin introduced me to her husband, Angel. If I had to guess just by looking at him, I'd say Angel Reynosa might be in a gang. Tattoos covered his arms and crept down his neck. He also had a stern appearance, but the conversation was very polite. "Where are you going for your honeymoon?" asked Angel. I told him we were going to Hawaii. He seemed genuinely interested and began asking me about the trip. I told him a little about where we were going and what we would do. While we were talking, he hugged petite Yasmin. "Someday, baby," he told Yasmin, "I'll take you there." He said this with such sincerity that it touched me. The rest of the wedding went great. We had a good time, and the guests seemed to enjoy it too. We had a honeymoon, as I said before, in Osa, in Hawaii, and had a great time. It was all over, and we went back to our normal lives, only now I was married. Our married life was wonderful. We both worked full-time. We developed a small plan for the house and grounds. If anything, Anna seemed to be more motivated than I was to get into the swing of things and do the work that needed to be done while we were transforming Aunt Helen's old house. After the wedding, the photographer we hired asked to come and take some photos of the area. He was impressed. He explained that they were preparing an article for the Sunday newspaper and were looking for unique landscapes. Anna was delighted with this, and it was also free advertising for her and her landscape architecture firm, GL2. Anna spent every free hour before the photo shoot working on the gardens. When the photo shoot was published in the Sunday newspaper, Anna appeared in 2 photographs. Her photogenic beauty, I believe, was one of the reasons for her appearance. She was also quoted several times in the newspaper article. She seemed to be a natural at working with the media. Another event happened in our lives about a year after the wedding. Tanner moved back. He told me how he had succeeded in Texas while working for a large firm. He thought he could bring some of his experience to the Pacific Northwest and start his own company. He called it Texas Pacific. Tanner rented expensive office space in the city center. He hired an attractive secretary. He furnished the office in high-end style. He once told me that in order to be successful, you need to look successful. I agreed to some extent, but Tanner was on the verge of shocking. Tanner became a part of Anna and my life. Tanner was single, the glamorous Greta Saint. Kitts and Tanner were no longer together. I had my moments of jealousy, but for the most part I was quite comfortable when Tanner, Anna, and I were together. I also became Tanner's insurance agent. I insured his personal property as well as his business. Tanner fell into the high-service customer category. I kept calling him because he had to pay the insurance premium. Several times I had to go to his office and ask him to write me a check so I could make sure he was insured. I constantly had to keep an eye on everything. It wasn't my job, but I did it for Tanner. Miss a payment and your insurance will be gone. One evening, Anna, Tanner, and I were at our house, sipping wine and talking about our professional and life goals. "I like helping people make good financial choices in their lives," I said. "I don't think I'll ever get rich, but I love what I do, and I love seeing people I've helped become successful. I'm happy with a nice, quiet life." A minute later, Anna said, "Someday I want to open my own landscaping company. I want to be known in society. I want to have designs that people show and talk about. I guess I want to be famous in some way." She laughed a little when she said this, but I knew she was serious. A few minutes later, Tanner spoke. "I'm a little different from both of you," he said, and he spoke in a very uncharacteristically sincere voice. "I want to earn so much money that I don't have to do what I don't want to do. I want to win big. I want to know that I can leave the business whenever I want without it affecting my lifestyle. That's what I want." I watched Tanner silently, and although we were good friends, I realized how different we were. Months passed, and months turned into years. I've often thought about that impromptu conversation about goals that I had with Tanner and Anna that June evening. I felt that although my goals may not have been as high, I was achieving them. Things were going well at the insurance agency. My dad worked 20 to 30 hours a week. He showed up in the morning around 9 with a newspaper. I continued to attract new clients and was constantly thinking of ideas to expand the business. Anna was also working on her goals. Less than a year ago, she left GL2 and became independent. With a little extra work from my friend, Greg Boston, the barn was turned into a full-fledged office. The shed sits among the many garden designs she created on my property. For Anna and her business, This was a great place to showcase her landscaping skills. She negotiated several landscaping contracts in our backyard while the client was wandering around the property. That left Tanner. From what I saw, Tanner was doing well. He was always active and constantly working on some projects or developments. I knew from my business dealings with him that at times his cash flow became quite unstable. As I already described, I constantly had to remind him to pay the premium. I wouldn't call it disorganized, just highly leveraged. But I knew his purpose. He wanted a big deal. One evening in mid-May, he called me and asked me to meet for drinks. He wanted to talk to me about something. "Let's meet at the Evergreen around 6 in the evening," he told me. Evergreen was a good bar and restaurant that catered to a young, party crowd. Not my choice, but it was okay. "Max, how are you?" He hugged me in greeting, and we sat down. I knew Tanner well enough to know that he was in his aggressive salesman style. I knew he wanted something, I just didn't know what exactly yet. "I may have the deal of a lifetime," he began, rubbing his palms together. "It's a little complicated, but it's guaranteed to pay off. I wanted to give you a chance to get in on the deal, Max." I had no doubt that Tanner considered me a good friend, but I had spent enough time with him to realize that his participation in this transaction was not evidence of our friendship. He needed something from me. Tanner told me that he had an option on a valuable piece of real estate on the island of Kauai in Hawaii. The widow of one of the executives of the company he worked for in Texas owned the property and was considering selling it. Apparently, Tanner became friends with her and always told her that if she wanted to sell the property, she should ask him first. He seemed to have charmed the elderly widow. Now she was offering the land to Tanner. "She wants $1 million for the plot," he told me excitedly. "It should cost 2 to 3 times more. It is on a beautiful sandy beach. When we build something, we'll get at least $5 million for a house on the beach," he explained. He took out a folder and showed me photographs of this bare piece of land, overgrown with bushes and palm trees. The blue-green sea sparkled in the background. I could definitely see how special this property was. "I can take out a few loans, and with the money I have, I can raise $500,000, Tanner told me. "If you put up $500,000, we can buy the property $5,050. I'll prepare some high-end marketing materials. We will sell beach real estate, and in at least a year your money will double, maximum in 18 months. His eyes assessed my reaction. His enthusiasm was somewhat contagious. I sat and thought for a while. He continued to add persuasive comments as I considered his proposal. "Tanner," I began. "Wow, you took me by surprise. This is truly a wonderful property, but $500,000 is a lot of money. I have no way to get that amount immediately. This will require a large collateral loan," I told him. All this time he nodded his head, trying to convey his excitement to me. He talked for a few more minutes about the deal, the property, and the profits. Finally, I told him that I needed to talk to Anna and think things through. Tanner was on fire for the rest of the evening. He was enthusiastic about everything. He was in serious sales mode. "Max," he exclaimed, "you are my best friend. We have known each other for a long time. I truly believe this will be good for us." I said I would contact him tomorrow, but it was funny that the more he convinced me, the more wary I became of entering into any partnership with Tanner. Later that evening, I told Anna about Tanner's proposal. She was curious about this. If anything, she was a little more interested in this opportunity than I was. I had mixed feelings, and the more I thought about it, the less I was inspired. I would sleep with this. By mid-morning, I decided to turn down the offer to invest in real estate for many reasons. There were 2 main reasons. I was too conservative in my investment philosophy. And the second reason is I was worried that it might hurt my friendship with Tanner in the long run if problems arose. I wrote to Tanner and asked if he would be willing to meet for lunch. He agreed. I knew he would be disappointed when I told him no, but I wasn't prepared for him to be disappointed. He got angry. "This is a sure thing," he told me. "How can you refuse $500,000 in profit?" The friendliness has long since disappeared. Now he doubted my intelligence and common sense. Finally, he played his last card. He questioned my friendship. When I tried to explain that I was concerned about how this deal might affect our friendship, he rejected my arguments. The more he became excited about my refusal to join his deal, the more confident I was that I had made the right decision. Tanner, I finally told him, if this is as true as you describe, then of course you will have many more who want to cooperate with you. He just stared at me. I could tell my words made him angry. I just didn't know why. Even Anna thinks it's a good deal, he told me. Anna, I said, have you talked to Anna about this? Since when does he talk to Anna about such things? An emotion that I had thought I had long ago flared up in my mind. Jealousy. He tried to explain that he wanted to get her ideas for landscaping for the proposed site. Ha, I thought, I'll have to listen to Anna. When we emerged, it was a far cry from the rapturous warmth of the previous evening. Now there was a small gap between our friendship. It will be interesting to see how this all turns out. Weeks passed. Anna told me that she was talking to Tanner about the property, and he asked her about tropical landscaping. She was happy to share her ideas for the project with him. She said she had not worked with tropical design before and was interested. She told me that she thought the land investment was a good deal, but also understood why I said no. Gradually, over the course of several weeks, my friendship with Tanner was restored to some extent. We were doing business together, so we needed to talk. I never asked him about the project, but it seemed to me that he was somehow promoting the plan. One day, I stopped by his office to pick up another nearly expired bonus check. I saw a glossy brochure with a picture of a gorgeous tropical home. I could tell it was on that beautiful beachfront property on Kauai. While I was looking at her, Tanner came out of his office. He told me that he has an interested party in this house. He told me that he personally raised the money, took out a loan, and bought land on Kauai. He said he's almost finished building a large rustic cedar home on a large lot in wine country. Once he's finished working on it, he'll temporarily move to Kauai to begin construction on the estate in about a month. I asked about a deal to sell an estate on Kauai. It will be sold for $5 million, he told me. Wow, $5.5 million, I exclaimed. Who is the buyer? I asked. Actually, a local guy, Tanner said. Do you know Sydney Winegrass? Yes, I knew who Sydney was Winegrass. That creep Michael Amich works for him. He didn't have a very good reputation, but I figured he was rich. Tanner, I said, be careful when dealing with Wiregrass. I've heard some not-so-good things about him and his business. Max, Tanner said, don't worry, I know Sid. We did business together. He's a great guy. Tanner brushed off my concerns. A few days later, Anna came and said that she had a new client, Tanner. She explained that she would create a design for a beach house he was building on Kauai. I'm delighted with this, she said. I always wanted to do a tropical project. What will this require from you? I asked. Most of the work will be done in my office, but I hope that in October, when I need to be there, you and I can have a second honeymoon, and it will be written off on taxes, she told me. It actually sounded great, especially in October in the Pacific Northwest, when rain, wind, and cold seem to be a constant part of life. A warm tropical vacation sounds wonderful, and I would like to see this house. Plus, I felt it would be beneficial for our relationship. Revive them. A week later, Anna burst into my room with more potentially good news. One of the local TV stations, KPAL, wanted to add a weekly garden program, and they wanted to talk to Anna about doing it. Life seemed to be moving in a positive direction for both Anna and me. Everything was fine, although I started to feel a little like Anna and my connection wasn't as strong. I explained this by the fact that we were both busy. One evening, Tanner, Anna, and I went for a walk. Tanner was scheduled to leave for Kauai in the next few days. We discussed our second honeymoon working vacation in October, when we would see Tanner's place of work. Tanner talked a little about the finances involved in buying a lot and building a beach home on Kauai. It was difficult, I couldn't keep track of it all and wondered how legit it all was. Looks like he was mixing things up. The money to complete the cottage in wine country could be used to pay for part of the estate on Kauai. It was difficult and, to say the least, unethical. The way I set things up, he told us, when we closed the Kauai real estate deal, I should get almost $4 million after taxes. He smiled and leaned back in his chair. I hoped that everything would work out for him, but I doubted it. After listening to him, I had no doubt about one thing: my decision not to enter into a partnership with him to purchase this property. As we left Tanner and were driving home, I expressed some of my concerns about Tanner's risky deal. "Can't you just be happy for him?" said Anna. "Just because he takes more risks than you doesn't mean he's doing wrong." I didn't answer. Her defense of Tanner was a surprise to me. A few months later, Anna interviewed with KPAL, a local television station that was looking for a gardening specialist to host a weekly show on Fridays. The idea was to get local garden centers to sponsor the show and encourage homeowners to plan gardening projects for the coming weekend. She was nervous and worried. Anna looked great and was photogenic, and this should have worked in her favor. She also had all the beautiful gardens on my property that she created to serve as the backdrop for her weekly gardening tips. She also had a shed office that could be converted into a makeshift studio. In early September, she was contacted by KPAL and offered a contract to host In the Garden with Anna weekly, starting in late November through the holidays, then resuming at the end of winter. Anna was delighted. She not only received a salary from KPAL, but also free advertising for her landscaping company, Distinctive Gardens. This was all great news. I felt like most of her energy had been focused on her career lately, and rightfully so. Still, I couldn't help but think that less of her energy was focused on us now. We started discussing our trip to Kauai. Anna corresponded with Tanner about a construction project on the oceanfront on Kauai. Things seemed to be progressing, but perhaps not as smoothly as Tanner had expected. I wasn't actually sure how often she talked to Tanner, but I walked into her office a few times when she was talking to him, and what I heard sounded less like a business conversation, more like small talk. We were supposed to leave on Friday and stay the following weekend, 8 days at the Sheraton Hotel on Kauai. I was looking forward to the break. I think we needed a good vacation to get our relationship back on track. My dad and Yasmin will take care of everything while I'm gone. I knew everything would be in good hands with Yasmin. 2 days before we were supposed to leave, disaster struck. My father had a heart attack. He was at home and started having chest pains. Mom called me and 911. An ambulance took Dad to St. Luke's Hospital. Anna and I met my mother at the hospital. Dad was conscious, but in pain. We stayed with him for a few minutes before being escorted out by his nurse. We later met with the cardiologist, and he said that my dad would stay in the hospital for a few days and then be on bed rest at home. Both Anna and I knew what this meant. There was no trip to Kauai for me. Not only did I have to support my parents, but I also had to be in the office during the week. Anna said she would stay home too, but we both knew she needed to be there to supervise the landscaping. I was busy with my father. We both decided that she should go and then try to get home as soon as possible. We will celebrate our second honeymoon at another time. My father was still in the hospital when I took Anna to the airport. I was preoccupied with my father's health and did not seem to attach any importance to Anna's trip. I tried to focus on her during the trip. I told her how much I would miss her and asked her to take time to relax and enjoy Hawaii. We said goodbye with hugs and kisses. She quickly disappeared into the long security line at the airport. I promised to call her daily. I returned to my father's bedside. On Saturday, my father was discharged with clear instructions to stay in bed. Doctors considered surgical options, including bypass surgery. One of my mom and I would be at his bedside for the next week or so to make sure he was recovering properly. My father always went to bed early and got up early. I told my mother that I would arrive at 5 in the morning on Sunday to be with him and give my mother the opportunity to get some sleep. She relieved me at about 9 in the morning. As I was driving home, I was surprised by Tanner's call. He asked about my father and then asked me to stop by a construction site in wine country at a large cedar cottage he was finishing. He needed something that the inspector left behind. I told him I would be with my dad today, but could pick it up sometime next week. He replied that any time during the week. I also told him that his insurance premium was past due. Yes, yes, I will give this to you, he told me. Typically, I'll have to stop by his office and get the check. When I talked on the phone, I wanted to be with Anna in Hawaii. I think it was because of the soft Hawaiian music I heard in the background while I was talking to Tanner. She made me remember our honeymoon trip. I associated Hawaiian music with the wonderful time we spent there. I decided to call Anna. It took a few moments, but she answered sleepily. "Good morning," she greeted me. And then it dawned on me that it was still early there. There is a 3-hour time difference between Hawaii and the West Coast. It was only 6 in the morning on Kauai. "I forgot how early it is, sorry," I told her. "Everything is fine. How is your dad?" she asked. We continued talking about my father and her trip. I longed to be with her. I imagined open doors to the balcony, a warm breeze, the sound of the ocean, a tropical smell in the air, and constant, beautiful Hawaiian music. We were in the middle of a conversation, and I wanted to discuss a couple more things with her when my mom called and I had to bow out. "I'll call you later," I told her and switched to talking with my mother. I had lunch with my dad while my mom ran errands. When she returned, she asked if I could do some housework while she was with Dad. I started doing things around the house and thought about Anna on Kauai, wishing I could be there again. I remembered our short conversation and the sensual images of Hawaii. Beaches, palm trees, sunsets, music. Music? I started thinking about music. I remembered the music that was playing in the background when I was talking to Anna. I also remembered the same music when I was talking to Tanner. I was seized by a flash of suspicious jealousy. I analyzed the facts. Tanner called me, and I heard Hawaiian music. A few minutes later, I called Anna. It was still early Sunday morning in Hawaii. It looked like Anna was in bed and had just woken up. I heard the same Hawaiian music. Were they together? And if so, what were they doing together at 6 in the morning on Sunday? Was I paranoid? Maybe Tanner was just staying at the same hotel as Anna and the music was blasting from the speakers. For a moment, it seemed possible and I relaxed. But upon further consideration, Tanner wouldn't stay at the $300 plus a night Sheraton for months on end while he worked on a beach house. He needed to find another, more economical place to live. Did Tanner sleep over at Anna's last night? I decided to call Anna. I told her that my dad was feeling better and we chatted for a while. Nothing specific. Then I decided to ask some questions. I asked her about the project and some general questions. "Did you manage to chat with Tanner after work?" I asked innocently. She hesitated. "Why do you ask?" she answered. Ooh, I knew that when she didn't want to answer a question, she would ask a question in response. "Oh, nothing special," I continued casually. "I'm just asking." "Well, that is, I saw him at a construction site," she told me. "That's all." I kept up a light conversation, but alarm bells were ringing in my soul. I didn't have definitive proof, but I had some clues that reinforced my suspicions. I later called Tanner, ostensibly to remind him of the overdue payment. Yes, I know," he said. "I'll contact Bernadette in the morning." I kept up a light conversation, nothing specific, just casual chatter. I then thanked him for taking care of Anna while she was there alone. "No problem," he replied. "I can't allow my friend's beautiful wife to be left unattended in the evening," he added. We talked a little more, and then I hung up. Something was wrong. Anna told me that she only meets Tanner at the construction site, and Tanner that she accompanies her in the evenings. The stories didn't add up, but I didn't have any concrete evidence that anything was happening. Just a lot of clues. I began to develop a plan. I called on the phone and made an appointment for tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock sharp. Monday morning, I met with Yasmin and Angel Reynosa at the office. I asked them for complete confidentiality. They agreed. I explained to them my concerns about Anna and Tanner. They didn't ask questions, they just listened. I asked them if they could go to Kauai and do an informal investigation. I gave them a folder with photographs of Tanner and Anna for identification. When Mr. Max asked Angel, "When do you want us to do this?" "Tomorrow," I told them. "I want you there until next Sunday. You will be staying at the same hotel as Anna. Just keep an eye on her. If nothing happens, just enjoy the week," I explained. Angel and Yasmin agreed immediately. I told Yasmin I would make all the arrangements and gave them $1,000 for expenses beyond housing and airfare. I told them that I would take them to the airport in the morning, but not a word to anyone about why they are going. They agreed. As they were leaving the office, Angel stopped me. "Mr. Max," he said, "thank you. If you ever need a favor, ask Angel." He looked me in the eyes, shook my hand, and left. I may be paranoid, but to me it's worth a few $1,000s to hear from Reynosa that Anna and Tanner are innocent of everything my overzealous imagination has concocted. I continued to call Anna daily, but I never picked up any signs from her that anything was wrong. I was starting to feel a little stupid about my paranoia and sending Reynosa's spy on me. On Thursday afternoon, I decided to go see Tanner's nearly completed project in wine country. He asked me to pick up one document from the district. As soon as I arrived at the cottage, Yasmin called me. I asked them not to call unless there was a reason for the message. I expected her to tell me everything was fine, but it wasn't like that. "Max," she began, "Angel took some photos that you should see," she told me. I asked her to tell me, but she just kept saying, "Look at the photographs." I heard my phone beep for received messages. I told her I would call back. There were 4 photographs. On the first, they walked, arm in arm, at sunset along the path in front of the Sheraton Bad, but not terrible. On the second, they kissed. It's already worse. The remaining 2 confirmed their betrayal. It was bad. I sat on a 5-gallon bucket in the garage at home. I was devastated. My wife and my best friend. I couldn't believe it. After everything I went through with Mia a few years ago, now it's all happening again. But worse, much worse. I don't know exactly how long I sat there, but it was over an hour, thinking that my life as I knew it was ending. I didn't know what to do. Can I forgive her? Can I forgive him? The answers were no and hell no. And then 2 things started happening to me. 1, anger began to creep into my brain. White-hot anger. Second, I started getting dizzy from the oil paint that was applied to the cedar shingles. In the corner of the garage, I saw a pile of oily rags. I remembered how in one of my insurance classes, they talked about the danger of spontaneous combustion of oily rags. I went to put them away, but suddenly stopped. I carefully put on a pair of light gloves. I collected all the rags and put them in a metal bucket, making a pile. Then I poured some more oil-based stains into the bucket. Next to the bucket, I placed a bunch of number 1 cedar shingles. After that, I turned on the heater next to the bucket of oily rags. Then I left. I took the document Tanner needed and left. Here in wine country, there were no neighbors nearby. Besides, I had a purpose for which I came here. If combustion really happened, how can you blame me? I remembered the discussion about spontaneous combustion. It occurs when oily rags or fabric are slowly heated to ignition temperature by oxidation. As the substance oxidizes, it begins to release heat. If this heat has no outlet, such as in a pile, the temperature will rise to a level sufficient to ignite the oil and set the rag or cloth on fire. This fire can quickly spread to other flammable materials and cause great damage. I sent Tanner a message saying I had the document. Later, I received a thank you in response. I also started thinking about Tanner's insurance. Now it was overdue. I wrote to him about this several times earlier in the week. There's no way I'm going to visit him to get it. At this point, technically, he didn't have fire insurance. I thought about Anna. I couldn't forgive her. She couldn't understand how much she had hurt me. I just wish she could experience the same pain. After a few minutes, I had an idea. I called Greg Boston, a builder friend of mine. We agreed to meet in the evening. I told him it was important and urgent. We met in a small restaurant. He looked at me and realized that something was wrong. He asked, and I waved him off. "Greg, you've asked me about my land several times already," I told him, and he nodded. "I want to sell, but I have several conditions. The most important thing is that I want the house and garden to be cleared and dismantled in the next 3 days." He almost choked when he heard the schedule. 3 days, he snorted. "This is impossible," he told me. I told him that if not, I would find someone who could do it. "Wait, Max, let me think," he said. After a moment, he said he thought he could do it, but it will be difficult. We discussed the price and another important condition. We had a gentleman's agreement. We shook hands, and he told me he would start work tomorrow. "Max, as a friend, I have to ask you what's going on," he said. "Greg," I said, "we will discuss this someday, but today is not that day." He nodded, and we both left. That evening, my phone buzzed on my bedside table. Tanner. I didn't pick up the phone. When I woke up, I had an urgent voicemail from Tanner asking me to call him. I was in no hurry. I flipped through the morning news. 4-alarm fire in the area Yamhill. Wine country, no one was hurt. The house was empty. But it was a complete loss. I called Tanner on the way, and he answered desperately. "Max, the house we were finishing burned down," he said. "I need this money. When can we receive compensation?" "Wait," I said. "Which house?" I was becoming a pretty good actor. He talked incoherently about the house, about his cash flow, which merged with the house he was building for Winegrass to Kauai. He was in a panic, jumping from one topic to another. I wasn't sure I could help him even if I wanted to, but I didn't want to. "Tanner," I said calmly, "let me go into the office and take a look at the situation. We can talk later." "Did you tell Bernadette to send a check for the bonus?" I asked. "What?" He sprayed saliva. "Don't you understand? I think I asked her." "Does it matter?" he continued. I told him I'd take a look and hung up. When I hung up, he was still talking. I had no intention of continuing the conversation. Our friendship was over. Now I had to deal with Anna. Over the next few days, I called Anna and tried my best to act normal. I think she felt something was wrong, but didn't say anything. I received some more photos from Angel Reynosa. They only confirmed the previous pictures. Anna and Tanner are lovers. Tanner kept calling. Each voice message sounded more and more desperate. Anna was supposed to return home on Monday, the day after tomorrow. I haven't told my parents anything yet. Dad shouldn't have been put under any more stress, and I needed Mom to focus on Dad. Greg Boston had several heavy equipment, graders, excavators, and tractors that were preparing the land for development. Several containers were delivered to me, and I placed all of Anna's personal and business belongings in one of them. My things went to another one. It was so strange driving up to my site. The horizon was completely different. No house, no gardens. On Monday, Anna's flight arrived around 6 p.m. I picked her up and hugged her, but when she reached out to kiss me on the lips, I turned around and the kiss landed on my cheek. She gave me a questioning look. I ignored him and asked how the flight was. On the way home, she realized something was wrong. We talked for a couple of minutes about the fire, but after a short conversation, I changed the topic. I was a good actor, but I could not completely disguise this betrayal. I suggested we stop at a small bar on the way home. "Max, I've already been on the road for 6 hours. I just want to go home," she said. "It'll only take a minute," I told her, and drove into the bar. When we sat down and had a glass, she looked at me, puzzled. "What's so important that we had to stop?" she asked. I handed her the folder with the photographs that Angel had sent me. I printed them out. When she opened them, she gasped. She looked from the photographs to me and back to the photographs. Max, it's not what it seems," she began. I hung out with Tanner a little, but nothing much happened. "You have to believe me." I held one photograph. I placed it in front of her. Did nothing really happen? I asked. About sobbed. She told me how sorry she was. She said things were getting out of control. Anna, I said with calm, controlled anger, I'm not sure you understand how deeply you've hurt me. I hope one day, maybe soon, you feel the same pain. Max, I'm very, very sorry. She sobbed. Should we just go home and try to work things out? She begged. Yes, I said, it's time to go home. And we left. I didn't say anything until the end of the trip. Anna sobbed and begged for forgiveness. I was silent. I wondered at what point Anna would realize that everything had changed. We didn't have to wait long. Max? She asked as we drove closer. What? What's going on? She saw heavy equipment and a house leveled to the ground. She continued to peer into the twilight as if she could not believe what she was seeing. I was silent, waiting for a reaction. Max, Max. Her head swiveled between her changed appearance and her gaze at me. Where is everything? The house, my office, my gardens. Her voice rose. I decided to develop this property. I got a good offer for the land, I told her calmly. They are going to build 28 houses. I got a very good price. I think everything will work out, I told her with false enthusiasm. Have you sold our house? What about my gardens? My business? She was furious. And then it dawned on her. What about my TV show? She screamed. I shrugged, raising my palms to the sky in a gesture. Well, okay. Anna walked through what had once been her garden. Pieces of once neatly planted shrubs and flowers were mixed with damp soil, which was loosened by heavy equipment. For several minutes, she simply stood still, looking at the changed landscape. Did you do this to hurt me? She asked. Is this my punishment? She shouted at me. I was silent. Answer. Answer me, you fucking asshole, she shouted. And then she collapsed into a sitting position, tears streaming down her cheeks. Perhaps she was experiencing the same pain as me. I felt absolutely no sympathy. Did I hurt you? I asked with exaggerated disbelief. We are married, and you fly to Hawaii while I'm taking care of my sick father and cheating with my best friend, I told her. When I found out, I realized that my life had changed. Forever. After that, I decided to make other changes. Your things are in this container. I pointed to the nearest one. And here are the car keys. I handed her the keys. I need to go to my relatives. You may have to stay with your family. Having said this, I began to walk to my car. Max, she shouted. So that's it. You destroyed my garden, ruined my career plans, and now you're just leaving? Is this really all our marriage is worth? She asked. I turned to her and stared at her. Don't you dare question my commitment to our marriage, I told her. We will talk about everything, but not today. And I left. The next morning in the office, I told Yasmin everything that had happened. She knew most of it. I also told her that Tanner would be calling and that she should act as my gatekeeper. Yasmin also confirmed that we never received a check for the insurance from either Tanner or Texas Pacific. Their insurance was officially canceled last Monday, 3 days before the house fire in wine country. The county fire inspector visited me mid-morning. Yamhill. Somehow, probably through Tanner, he was informed that I was in the house on Thursday, the day of the fire. I told him that yes, I was there. I picked up the documents at Tanner's request. He asked if I had noticed anything, smelled anything, or if anything looked unusual. I replied that I had only been to this house once, a few months ago, so I had nothing to compare it to. But no, I didn't notice anything unusual. I then asked if they had determined the cause of the fire. Nothing official yet, but, he said, it could have been a spontaneous combustion. I arched my eyebrows and looked at him with a confused expression. Spontaneous. What? I asked. He went on to explain the properties of spontaneous combustion. I nodded, asked a few inquisitive questions, and then he left. That was the last I heard from the fire department. I asked Yasmin to look into Tanner's claims against Guarantor, the property and liability insurance company we represent. I didn't want to get involved with this lawsuit. My anger at Anna was only eclipsed by my anger at Tanner. Tanner kept trying to reach me on both my cell phone and my office phone. I ignored my cell phone, and Yasmin rejected calls to the office. He seemed to be getting more and more desperate. Yasmin began the process of obtaining an insurance claim through guarantor for Tanner. But as I knew how insurance companies work, if a payment is late, it can be difficult to get compensation. Early one morning, after numerous calls, I finally accepted Anna's phone call. "Max," she said, "we need to talk. I am so sorry. I love you so much. I need you." I decided that this meeting was inevitable. I was still in a daze from her betrayal, but I wanted to understand it. That she cheated with Tanner during what was supposed to be our second honeymoon was beyond unacceptable. "Okay," I agreed. "Let's meet at the Coffee Clutch in Old Town at 4 o'clock in the afternoon," I said, and hung up when she agreed to meet. We met without hugging or any physical interaction. She continued to look at me, as if assessing my state of mind. Anger, sadness, contempt. She wanted to understand what I had come to. I decided to start. "Anna," I began, "when we first met, you, more than anyone else, knew how much I suffered from my relationship with Mia in high school. I know, and I felt so bad that I—" She interrupted. I raised my hand. "Anna," I said, calm but irritated, "let me finish. Your turn will come, but I think it's important for you to hear where I'm going with this." She silently nodded her head affirmatively. "After Mia," I continued, "I almost decided that I would live as a confirmed bachelor. I went on dates, but nothing serious. But then you showed up. You cheered me up. I thought you understood. I trusted you. It seemed to me that I was healed. And now this. You cheated on me, not only with your ex-boyfriend, but also with my best friend. I'd be very curious to know why," I told her. She spent several minutes talking about how sorry she was and what a big mistake it had all been. I looked at her with a straight face as she tried to find some kind of forgiveness. Anna said she knew it was so wrong, but at the same time she thought that since I would never find out, it would just be a fling. She will put it out of her mind and won't talk about it anymore. "Max, please, don't ruin our lives over such an insignificant thing. Tanner means nothing to me. I will do everything that you want. Please, I'm begging you. Please, please, at least think about it," she begged. I agreed to think about it. The next day, I petitioned her for divorce. The thing is, that evening, after leaving Anna at the Coffee Clutch, I really thought about it. And the more I thought about it, the angrier I became. In the end, I realized that, no matter what, I could never fully trust her again. I can't live like this. She called me, texted me, and finally came to the office when I didn't answer. She burst into the office, angry at me for serving her. She said I promised to think about it. Why did I give up on our marriage? Do I really have no compassion? Haven't I ever made mistakes? And so on. I hardly spoke. Then she started talking about how I ruined her business opportunity at K-Pal. Without her gardens, it seems they've re-evaluated in the garden with Anna. The gardens were meant to be the backdrop. Without them, the show's appeal diminished. My silence seemed to anger her. She then claimed that she was entitled to half of our property, including the house and land. "Anna, this land is in a family trust. My Aunt Helen ordered it that way," I told her. "Even so, I was the caretaker of this property before you and I got together. I consulted my lawyer. You have no rights to the property or anything in the trust. Now, if you don't mind, I have some more work to finish." And with these words, I turned the computer screen towards me and began to work. She sat for a minute, stood up, walked out, and slammed the door as she left. Only 3 days later, Tanner showed up in my office. I thought he was still in Hawaii. I heard a noise in the waiting room where Yasmin was sitting. Before I could figure it out, Tanner burst into my office. "Get out," I told him, pointing to the exit. "Max, give me a minute. I deserve it. I need to talk to you, not to." And he pointed his thumb back to where Yasmin was now standing. I was furious, but I was also curious what he had to say about his financial situation and his contacts with Anna. "I need you to move forward with this lawsuit, He told me with a desperation I had never seen from Max before. I'm running out of time with real estate in Hawaii. I need money for a cottage in wine country so I can finish the house on the beach, he said chaotically. I thought about his words. Looks like he mortgaged a cottage in wine country to buy a lot on Kauai. Then I took a deposit from Wineglass to finish with wine country. He then mortgaged a lot on Kauai to obtain materials to build a beach house, or something like that. He ended up being highly leveraged and in debt to Sydney Winegrass Coastal House. First of all, I told him, instead of spending time in Hawaii with my wife, you should have paid the insurance premium. Secondly, I have no control over the claims. The guarantor decides whether the claim is justified, not me. I'm just an agent. Third, I doubt you will receive compensation for your claim. Your policy was canceled due to lack of payment. Finally, get out of here. I never want to see you again. Max, he began and really turned on the charm. Listen, the matter with Anna is a trifle. She loves you. You are everything she talks about. He roared like a nightingale. I interrupted him. Get out, I growled. Finally, he left. I wondered what he had done. I still couldn't keep track of all the loans and collateral, but I knew one thing. He was in deep shit with Sydney Winegrass. Not someone I'd want to get on the bad side of. Life, over the next week or two, went on as usual. Greg Boston was developing Aunt Helen's old lot into what was to become a neighborhood at some point. My father was also getting better. Anna got a lawyer, and our lawyers were sorting through the property, gradually unraveling the financial components of our marriage. The emotional part was like a dark cloud engulfing me. When surrounded by others, I tried to remain cheerful and positive. But being alone was very difficult. I had a few dark thoughts, mostly centered on Tanner and Anna. I decided to see a psychologist. Slowly, I began to see small glimmers of positivity in my life. One evening, a few weeks after that last meeting with Tanner, I met up with a couple of friends for drinks and food at a casual restaurant just outside of town. As I walked toward the dark parking lot, I began to think that maybe my life could return to some kind of normalcy. I was kidnapped by Mr. Pipluangrassa. I managed to explain to him that I had nothing to do with his affairs with Tuner, and how his insurance agent regularly reminded him that he needed to pay for insurance. They let me go. Michael, take me early to his car, he says Amish. And Mr. Early, don't say a word about this to anyone. Am I making myself clear? He asks. I silently nod in agreement. As much as I would love to report this, I don't want to spend my life worrying and looking over my shoulder. I stared at Amish. He was one of the guards Winegrassa. Looking at him, I thought, I don't know where and when, but I will take revenge. The sun was gorgeous as I looked out over the blue water of my pool. Part of my negotiations with Greg Boston, a builder friend of mine who designed this property, involved my own residence. I took a half-acre with a backyard facing directly south on the highest part of the property. He designed a beautiful mid-century modern single-level home with a resort-like backyard and a beautiful pool. The divorce was difficult. My lawyer did a good job protecting me from having to share the proceeds from Aunt Helen's estate with Anna. She, of course, tried to get her share. I ended up having to write her a check, but it was much less than she asked for. Last I heard, she was still upset about it. My thoughts, as often happens, returned to our relationship. For some reason, I was thinking about that evening when Anna, Tanner, and I sat and discussed our individual dreams. In the end, none of us got what we wanted. Tanner wanted to be rich, Anna wanted to be famous, and I just wanted a quiet life with my business and my wife. Tanner wasn't rich, and it's unlikely he was even alive. Anna, at least for the moment, was not famous. The opportunity to work with KPAL has disappeared. One thing I remember in connection with our thoughts is that I said that I would never be rich. I was wrong about this too. By selling real estate, I quickly became a multimillionaire. And of course, I did not have the quiet existence with my wife that I so wanted at that moment in my life. It bothered me at times, but I had already come to terms with my single life. At that moment, I looked up and saw my new girlfriend emerging from the far end of the pool. I smiled. "Max," young Brittany asked, "can you put some sunblock on me?" "Yes," I smiled. I was becoming comfortable as a bachelor. The ballroom was bustling with activity, and everyone was dressed in elegant evening wear. My date, Kai, looked stunning in a black miniskirt. There were dozens of round tables throughout the hall. The annual Children's Charity Ball was one of the main social events of the year. At the far end of the hall, I saw Sidney Winegrass with an attractive woman who was at least 10 years younger than him. I decided to walk up to his table and shake his hand. At first, he didn't recognize me. The last time he saw me, I looked bad. Having recognized me, he showed courtesy in his refined manners. I just provided myself with an alibi. I quickly left. As I turned and walked back to my table and Kai in her miniskirt, a shiver ran down my spine. I needed to wash my hands. Michael Samich beat up when he was returning home. One of the participants who started the fight was called Angel. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.